Alright, got some time. Let's see how the Clone High reboot is doing.
All lives matter.
Yep, that sounds about right. Oh, this is gonna be a fun one. Hello everyone and welcome to the Void Theater. As always, I'm your host Alexander, and it's time to review a show almost 20 years into the making. I'm of course talking about Clone High, the show that was put on ice both metaphorically and literally 20 years ago on MTV, and has now jumped over to HBO Max. Oh, sorry, I mean Max. Because out of all the things that have come out of this godforsaken deal, that is the thing that annoys me the most. But the show is thawed out and ready to make some new memories. So the question is, how has the show held up over the years? And more importantly, was it worth dragging it out of the freezer for a refresher? And that's what I'm here for, breaking down the good, the bad, and the ugly in the revival of this old school cult classic. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. But without any further delay, we can begin. So, let's raise the curtain, put this show on stage, and see how it plays out. Alright, so I want to get this out of the way. This video is only going to cover the first 2 to 3 episodes that have aired as of the time of writing and recording. This may seem like a small sample number, but I think it's fair. The point of the first 2 to 3 episodes of a show is to make the viewer want to tune in and watch the rest of the series. Even more so for a series like this, where while there might be an overarching story, it's otherwise just a loose slice of life. But the question is, do the first 2 to 3 episodes do that? And the answer is yes and no. So let's try and break this down, and we'll start with the good because I prefer to start positive and then negative. And in the case of this show, it's way more on the latter. But in terms of positive, we can't not mention how the new song is fantastic. It's a more fleshed out remix of the original, and I'm glad they kept it and just gave it a new coat of paint. As for things more related to the show, I can say that the voice actors are just as good as they were when the show aired. They all managed to keep that same level of energy they had from the original run, which leads to the issue of the new characters, most of whom aren't really into the good area, but we'll deal with that in a second. One new character I can give some credit to is Frida Kahlo, whose design, personality, and voice acting, while loud and colorful, at least makes sense with the person she's cloned from. While Frida didn't have the bright neon colors in her artwork like her clone, her art was vibrant, and while the show cranks it up to 11 and makes it a little hard to look at, I can at least say I get the inspiration behind it. It's not the best design, but it's a solid one. And personality wise, she's the only one who, well, actually feels like they have a personality. Unlike the other three who I'll get to in a moment, Frida feels like she's defined. The others just feel like they were an afterthought and got finished halfway to the deadline of the show's release. Speaking of, let's talk about the elephant in the room and go over the new characters. Because aside from Frida, we have 3 other new clones and a new principal / governance supervisor. I'm not really sure if that's her job, but she's new. Anyway, I say 3, but the truth is that 2 of them are just recycled clones from the old show given a new coat of paint. Those being Harriet Tubman and Confucius. And the main thing to talk about is their designs, or their redesigns, because they're fairly mixed when it comes to the community reception. And I mean, I get it. Compared to the original designs the cast has, they're very bright, in your face, and genuinely kind of obnoxious. Whereas characters like JFK and Abe had very toned down, muted colors, the new clones have ultra bright neon that comes off as offensive to the eyes. And that's not mentioning the awkwardness of their actual body shapes. And I think Confucius is arguably the biggest offender of this. His design isn't bad overall, it's more just average, but the way his body is shaped is just off-putting. As for the others, it draws back to their general color palette. Case in point, on the other end of the character spectrum we got is Harriet Tubman, who got the most criticism. And I kinda get it. She's going for this like Tumblr personality. She's bright and vibrant and has this whole artistic vibe with her. Her entire design just feels like what would happen if someone shouted the word Tumblr at an AI generator. Again, the design isn't overtly bad, but it's very in your face. It feels like it's trying to do more with less and just failing every step of the way with it. Then you have Topher Bus, one of the actual new characters who's based on Christopher Columbus. He's fine. Honestly, that's probably the best thing I can say about him. He's fine. I'll get into it in a moment, but they have an idea of what they wanted his entire joke to be, and he's pretty much designed around that, and it works as well as it can. Finally, we have the new government supervisor, Candide Simpson, who is actually voiced by Cleo's original voice actor. Again, like Topher, she's fine. Her jokes land well enough, and I think with a bit more time, she could be one of the better additions. I think her main problem is that she feels really tacked on. The joke of her being Scudworth's supervisor is a solid one, with him being attracted to her while she tries to kill him, and out of the episodes, those were arguably the funniest jokes in them. It's just that's all I feel they're going to do with her until some big mid-season cliffhanger. But other than that, she's just okay. Like the clones, she's not good, but she's not bad. Moving on, let's finally talk about the negatives of the show. And aside from the big one we'll get into in a moment, one of the major ones is the animation. Honestly, it's really jarring and off-putting. I think the main reason is because the show was designed with older animation software in mind. Design-wise, they're fine. No one's had any major changes aside from maybe Joan, who had her edges smoothed down. But I think the characters having those sharp edge designs mixed with the fact that it was older and had less resolution helped hide some of the awkwardness. But now that everything's in HD coupled with the fact that it's using new software, you get, well, this. So there are times when it's insanely smooth and then other times when it almost looks like they're working with a puppet. Like there are multiple scenes with Abe where it's just off-putting. It's like watching a skeleton dancing. It's why other shows that have this design style like Total Drama tend to give their characters more rounded edges to contrast the sharpness. Like I said, it's not terrible, but it's extremely noticeable when it happens and it just kind of throws you. But let's wrap things up and talk about possibly the worst aspect of the show. And as much as I hate to say it, it's mainly the humor. Now before I deep dive into that, I want to make something very clear. When Clone High Original came and went in 2002 to 2003, I was around 5 years old. I'm bringing that up because I see the common answer when people start any conversation on the reboot's humor is that people want it to be like the old show they grew up with. I saw the original when I was 17 to 18. I don't want the humor to be the same as when it first aired. I just want it to be consistent. And frankly, it's just all over the place when it comes to what the actual jokes are. Like I said, there are some times when the jokes feel right, but that's at best only half the time. The other half is dedicated to jokes that, if I'm being honest, aren't even bad, just exhausting. In the original series, the show always had this consistent style of joke telling that never felt like they needed to constantly remind you of what year they were in. It never felt like it had to rely on too much because it didn't. It had its references and obviously it was playing up the high school romantic drama angle, but aside from that, you could just sit and enjoy the show without needing any additional details. Speaking as someone who has the faintest ideas of shows like Dawson's Creek and 90210, I was still able to enjoy the old show because they understood how to make a theme work around a joke. With the reboot, it feels like the opposite. There are entire episodes where it feels like the theme was first and then every joke was based on that. Case in point, the pilot. Now, let me explain something again. A pilot is a test engine for the series. It's supposed to make you say, I can't wait to see more of this. I saw the pilot for Clone High 2023, and my first thought was, oh, it's the same joke I've already heard over and over and over again. For anyone who clicked on here and hasn't gotten around to seeing the show yet, I can't say this enough, just skip the pilot. I promise you, anything you think you need to know about any new characters will be answered in other episodes. But the main theme of the pilot, aside from the clones being thought out, was the idea of modern sensitivities and cancel culture. That is it. That's the entire episode. If you've seen any other show tackle the same topic, you've seen this. It's the same joke, the same punchline, and the same story beats. Everything is the same. I shit you not, I swear I've heard some of the jokes here on Family Guy episodes that have done the same idea. But you wanna know the worst part? Out of all the shows that have done this bit, Clone High was probably one of the best places they could have attempted it. I mean, just think of the premise of the show for a minute. It's a school full of all the most famous people in history, the good and the bad. And the only famous clone who's getting cancelled is Columbus. If you're going to do a joke like this with a show like this, why not push the envelope? They kinda did it with Ivan the Terrible, but why stop there? Why not clone Vlad the Impaler or clone Oppenheimer, who's a paranoid nervous wreck because he's seen what the atomic bomb has turned into? Or if you want to go even deeper on an older joke, why not clone Adam and Eve or Cain and Abel? You already have Jesus Christos, which is a great joke, but why not go deeper on that idea? It doesn't even have to make sense, it just has to be funny. And honestly, that's the biggest issue with Clone High 2023. It has a solid concept of building off of the ideas of the original, but it feels like it's holding itself back from greatness. So, with all that being said, should you watch it? And the answer, I think, is yes. Let me make it clear. The show does have its issues. A lot of them are minor and a lot of them are substantial. But overall, I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy my time so far with the show. Even the things most people disliked, I didn't find all that bad. I genuinely enjoy Confucius as the new Gandhi to everybody, but even less popular. And I think that Harriet could be enjoyable if they build her right as the show progresses. It's just right now she's rough around the edges. And really, that's the main takeaway for the show as it is right now. It's not bad. Again, the parts that are good are great. It's just rough. Like I said, a pilot is supposed to make you want to keep watching the rest of the season. But here, I was genuinely worried about the show after watching it because of how unfunny it got at times. I like most of the new characters, I just hope they take the time to build them up as the season progresses. I like the fluid animation, except when it gets all janky. So what would I give Clone High if I had to rate it? Probably a 7 out of 10? I want to make it clear, I don't hate the reboot. It's just that it has a lot to live up to and so far hasn't really gotten there yet. Do I think it never will? No. but it's got a long way to go. The things that are positive about the show are really good. It's just that they're bogged down by a lot of mediocrity. But I think that given time, Clone High could be just as good as the show was cloned from itself. But with that, we come to the conclusion on the review of Clone High 2023. They really gotta start giving more distinct names to these reboots. It's killing me with the 2023 crap. But as always, with the current closing, I'll leave you with some questions. How do you feel about the recent Clone High show, and do you think it can be just as good as the first? Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think, and while you're down there, be sure to subscribe for more content. Until next time, I've been your host Alexander, and I hope to see you back in my theater.